Software coming.
Okay. Sorry for the slight delay. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Nuga, Chairperson of Rajiv Gandhi Science Center Trust Fund, distinguished guests, our panelists for this online workshop, professionals in the SME sector and connected areas. Very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center Trust Fund Board and my staff, I wish to welcome you for this online discussion and forum. Now, yesterday we had the launching ceremony by Honorable Minister. I hope some of you joined, and he was very impressed by the connection that we have set up between science and technology and SME, because in fact there's a perception that there's no bridge between SME and S&T, which is in fact a wrong belief system, because they all start from S&T and then they become an economic value. Now, today we are having experts from various areas, and I wish to thank you all, your institutions and yourself, for being present on this platform today. We have Mr. Ravin Ramprasad from SME Mauritius Limited, Dr. Vikram Biswanath from the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council, Mr. Hemant Murutia, from the DBM, Mr. Ved Siban from the National Computer Board, Mr. Venkatasamy from Business Mauritius. I hope I haven't missed anyone. In case you have missed anyone, apologies. So thank you again for joining us. And as you are aware, you have been briefed about it. We had a small briefing session earlier, and Mr. Rangu is coordinating that. So what I wish to tell you is we are going to have a brief presentation from each sector, each of you present here. But the focus will be on the panel discussion, which I hope will bring some positive contribution to that sector, showing the bridge between science and technology and the SME sector, how science and technology is really helping or can be a very useful tool, especially in the present situation all the Mauritians are facing. So I won't be long. I wish you a very fruitful workshop. I'll be back for the panel discussion at the end. Meanwhile, I will pass on to Mr. Rangu, who is the manager curator of our education department at the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center. He'll be the moderator and the host for the rest of the event for today. So all the best, and I wish you a very positive workshop. Have a good day. Mr. Rangu, you can take over.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu, for your welcome. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to today's workshop on reinventing and readapting the SMEs in the post-COVID-19 era, the role of science and technology. The advent of COVID-19 has impacted the global economy, exposing the small and medium enterprises to various kinds of challenges and opportunities. Today's workshop aims at providing a common platform for experts in the business sector to share their experiences and suggestions with entrepreneurs in the present COVID-19 scenario. The role of science and technology in addressing the challenges and opportunities in the SME sector will be highlighted. Our first speaker for today's workshop is Mr. Ravin Ramprasad. He is currently the CEO of the SME Mauritius. He has been operating for more than 25 years at senior management position in the private sector, both locally and abroad. He has also served on the board of directors of most of these private sector companies. Mr. Ravin Ramprasad holds a Master in Business Administration and a Master in Marketing and Innovation. He is a Chartered Manager, a Chartered Marketer, and a Fellow of the Chartered Management Institute, UK. I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Ramprasad to deliver his presentation entitled Innovation from the SME perspective. Mr. Ramparsad, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rangu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your panel. I think SME Mauritius has made several contributions with regards to discussions that have been held in the wake of COVID-19, because we want to discuss further. We want to have institutional discussions in order to ensure that it comes to inform policy so that we can, as a common voice, advocate what needs to be done in order to relaunch the SMEs in the post-COVID era. I think COVID is here to stay, therefore, we better adapt ourselves in order to continue working and in order to continue contributing to the economy of our country. With regards to SMEs, it's important to look at SMEs not as a homogeneous group, but rather as a very heterogeneous group. And the fact that they are heterogeneous has implications with regards to their ability to absorb technology, to adapt to new requirements. In Mauritius, we have approximately 140,000 SMEs. They come from diverse industries. They operate in diverse industries. There are diverse industry dynamics, diverse market dynamics, diverse requirements. The SMEs are at different stages of their development. They are at different stages of their life cycle, and operating in a small overtraded market as the Mauritian market, where most of their raw materials and inputs are imported, away from logistic hubs, away from main shipping lines, creates a series of challenges for SMEs. With COVID, this has only compounded the different challenges and has increased the necessity for them to readapt to a new routine. I think that it would be fair to say that normal routine of SMEs have been disrupted from inside and from outside. Internally, many SMEs have suffered from disruptions on their own value chains, behavioral disturbances resulting from people, human beings, because this is what drives SMEs. They are more wary. Sanitary measures, the cost base has been disrupted. There have been changes in normality. You have the work from home phenomenon which is gaining ground, and there has been necessity to adapt. Similarly, from outside, there have been lots of changes in the working environment of SMEs. Though they do operate in different sectors, in different industries, along different lines, there have been lots of market changes. To start with, there has been a slowdown as a result of COVID, a slowdown in sales. There have been supply chain disruptions affecting inbound logistics. For those who are exporting, you have had disruptions with regards to external outbound logistics. You have the higher costs of operations. And all this has come to get them into a new paradigm, which they have to review, to adapt, revisit their business models in order to ensure that they survive the difficulties, structural and conjunctural difficulties created by COVID, and they move forward with their progress and their growth. Necessity, therefore, to reinvent and to readapt, which makes today's theme very relevant to the reality that they are living. Now, I would wish to look at how do we get them to take technology on board, the technology intake, the absorption, whether or not there is talent availability, the ability to pay to acquire technology, to maintain this digitalization process. This, of course, has in itself several challenges. Do SMEs have there is a list from OECD which gives you barriers to innovation. Do they have this talent to imitate? Do they have the talent to create? Yes, definitely, I think so. Once they have either created new or the old in a new format, what is the speed at which they are going to take it to the market, and what is the speed at which the market is going to react? All these are determinants as to whether they are going to go for technological changes, continuous changes, adoption of technology on a continuous basis, investment in technology on a continuous basis, because it is only the returns that they will see that will influence them in investing additionally in technology. Many of them have a lack of market information. This lack of market information gets them to be in a position where they cannot really decide on the type of technology that is required. They have funding difficulties. Sales have dropped. Cash flow is very stringent, and they are finding difficulties in their normal business. Therefore, trying to convince them to adopt technology at this stage, which is a necessity, a sine qua non condition, because this is the only thing that is going to improve their efficiency, their productivity at a stage where things are becoming more expensive, when manpower itself may not be available, talent may not be available. These are additional challenges that SMEs are facing. Therefore, I think, yes, SMEs need to readapt. They need to reinvent themselves. There is a lot of work that is being done in order to get them to understand the necessity of reviewing their model of operation. SME Mauritius is conducting a lot of capacity building in order to get them to meet the challenges, the future challenges, and the ongoing challenges that the market is presenting to them, and the new economic environment. So, but I think SME Mauritius alone would not be able to do it on his own. Reason why I sincerely believe that there has to be a joint institutional approach to a national problem into getting them to relaunch their businesses as we move on into this uncertainty that has been created by COVID. Therefore, at SME Mauritius, despite the fact that there are so many difficulties and so many challenges, we do recognize the importance of innovation as a key determinant of productivity and the long-term growth of SMEs. At SME Mauritius, we have been emphasizing for some time now the development of internal strategic resources that they require, for example, their management, their manpower, their ICT, the improvement of their adaptation capabilities. We have got them to accept that technology is not a one-off issue. It requires continuous adaptation and intake. We got them to understand the necessity of promoting collaboration and partnerships, because very often single firms cannot do it alone on the market. Therefore, there needs to be a certain collaboration might be not to the extent of killing off their entrepreneurial spirit, but getting them to understand that very often collaboration can bring them more value than pure competition. Therefore, on our side, we are thinking of giving them much more the perspective of innovation as a continuous flow into their system, continuous exchange of information, so that they are in a mood to constantly adapt. There is no doubt that readapting, reinventing is, as I said, a sine qua non condition. This is a given. There is no way getting out of it. SMEs will have to readapt, will have to reinvent. And I think in all sincerity, I think in all honesty, we have to say that they have done so. You would be surprised by the resilience that they have shown. You see, one of the weaknesses of SMEs is that they are small, which makes them more vulnerable. But in moments of they are owner managers at the head of SMEs. The one good thing about it is that in moments of difficulties, as we are facing right now, they are more apt to react faster than bigger systems due to their flexibility, due to their ability of taking on new products at a speed that others cannot. The fact that they are more flexible makes them more adaptable. In other words, what in normal circumstances is considered as a weakness for SMEs at times of difficulties becomes a strength. And this is what we have seen. And this is what has improved, or rather given them additional resilience facing the difficulties that of the post-COVID era. So SME Mauritius is trying to ensure that the adaptation of technology, more a sort of incremental adoption of technology rather than a fully disruptive one for the many, and disruptive ones for the few, those who are really ready. Because it is important to realize that when you take on technology and it is disruptive, there is necessity that you have the backing behind it, the backing in the form of talent, in the form of training, in the form of means, because you're remodeling your whole system. And this is not done overnight. It has to be planned. And it is a conscious choice that can make or break organizations. So on our side, we are laying a lot of emphasis on the development of internal strategic resources. As I said, we have a scheme, the Internal Capability Development Scheme, which looks at productivity improvement, process re-engineering, lean manufacturing, coupled with mentoring and holding in order to allow SMEs to readapt, to change internally. We have a second scheme, which is called Technology and Innovation Scheme, which supports SMEs in acquiring technology that would help them with their efficiency and would help them with their productivity. This covers productive machinery, and it also covers marketing tools, because marketing is such an important element of innovation. If you innovate and you take your product to the market and it does not work out for you, then the chain is broken. There is less likelihood that you would be investing in technology again. So we ensure that the marketing part, not selling part, but the marketing part, along with all the tools that are required, are partly financed by SME Mauritius through the technology and innovation scheme. And we also have the inclusiveness and integration scheme to support SMEs who want to go into collaborative agreements, inclusive agreements, integrative agreements with other SMEs in order to help them join hands to face market realities and market dynamics. This is therefore what SME Mauritius has been doing in the face of the new realities created by COVID, and which we feel is working, because looking at the number of SMEs that have been taking advantage of the schemes that are offered by SME Mauritius, I can give you a figure. It's approximately 700 over the last financial year, and it will be approximately the same number or even more for this financial year. And with regards to number of employees that they have, it is in excess of 4,000 employees that these SMEs have, and their turnover is in excess of 3.5 billion rupees. So I think up to now, we have done a lot with regards to helping SMEs reinvent and readapt, but there is a long, long road ahead. And we hope that by joining hands with other institutions, we'll be able to meet the challenge. This was my intervention, and I thank everyone around the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravindra Prasad, for your excellent presentation. You have put into perspective the different challenges the SMEs are facing, the opportunities by using technology, and how they can convert their weaknesses into strengths, and how the SME Mauritius is trying all its best to support the SME sector by capacity building, providing capacity building, making the SME to reinvent and readapt themselves, and also for the development of internal strategic resources and for the marketing, right? So lots of suggestions you have given to the entrepreneur, right? I thank you very much, Mr. Ramprasad. And our next speaker for today's session is Dr. Vikram Biswanath. He's from the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council. His experience in policy making, grant management, and strategic planning. He has spearheaded high-impact projects for the Republic of Mauritius, including the first Mauritian Nanosatellite Initiative, the MEASAT. He also drives the National SME Incubator Scheme, consolidating the startup ecosystem in Mauritius. He is knowledgeable in innovation opportunities and advises on key incentive and support measures, helping to build resilience through innovation in today's evolving tech ecosystem. Dr. Vikram Biswanath, welcome to today's workshop, and your presentation is entitled The National SME Incubator Scheme. Dr. Biswanath, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Rangu, for this. And can you see my screen? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can
Yes,
see you.
yes, it's visible.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to thank the director of the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center and all his personnel for facilitating this event. So my presentation today is on the National SME Incubator Scheme. I am from the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council. So our main role is the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council. We operate under the aegis of the Ministry of Information Technology, Communication and Innovation. We are main advisor to government in all matters pertaining to applied science, research, technology, and innovation. And we promote collaborative and inclusive innovation to foster high quality research, development, and innovation in Mauritius. Now, the MRIC, we are a not-for-profit organization, and government provides us part of the taxpayers' funds to provide help in terms of research and innovation grant schemes to the Republic of Mauritius. So we feel that innovation is a key driving force for everybody, especially SMEs, to get us out of this issue, of this problem presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been left alone in some way, and it is, and as Mr. Rampersad clearly mentioned, we are facing very difficult situation, and we have a huge number of challenges. However, on the brighter side is that in general, the Mauritian society, the Mauritian SMEs and the Mauritian businesses have a very strong resilience. And when we put our heads together and when we start believing in our own forces, we can do quite some miracles. So the MRIC, our main objective is to create a sort of a collaborative environment where we make the following sectors intervene and collaborate together, because we feel, and we are convinced rather, that without the collaboration of the private sector, the public sector, the society in general, and especially the academic sector where the new knowledge is created, we will not be able to innovate together. So for this, the MRIC, for us to be able to make this 4 pillars collaborate, we have a number of research and innovation schemes. So I wish to invite our fellow SMEs. I will briefly, for sake of time, over all the different schemes, and all of these are grants. All of these are grants. So the MRIC provide part funding grants, and we do not ask anything in return because this is taxpayers' funds. So briefly, we have the Research and Innovation Bridge, which promotes collaboration from international parties. So you can get expertise from international parties to come and help you in your business, but the research part should be done here in Mauritius, the innovation part in Mauritius. We have the Pole of Innovation Grant Scheme, perhaps not quite adapted for the SMEs, but its role is to create a pool of innovation, so a sector specific to develop a specific innovation. Collaborative Research and Innovation Grant Scheme, whereby it is a private sector-led initiative. So whenever, for example, you want to test a new product, a new service, you could look into this Collaborative Research and Innovation Grant Scheme, where you should collaborate with an academic or a research institution. So for the RIBs, we can provide up to a maximum of 10 million rupees, provided that there is a matching fund. For the CRIGs, the Collaborative Research and Innovation Grant Scheme, we can provide up to a maximum of 5 million rupees. There should be a matching grant. The Intellectual Property Grant Schemes, that promotes the creation of patents, of new property. So you can protect your intellectual property through this scheme. We have another scheme, the Social Innovation Research Grant Scheme, which is more for social well-being. proof of concept, whether when you have a new concept that you would wish to prove, the MRIC can provide a grant up to 1 million rupees. And the last one is, which is going to be the main subject of this presentation, is the National SME Incubator Scheme. So the National SME Incubator Scheme, this is a government measure in the budget speech 2016-2017. And the role is to promote the initiation and development of innovative startups in Mauritius. This is done through a network of private sector-led business incubators. So the MRIC collaborates with, currently we have 7 trusted business incubators. So the MRIC part funds the operational cost of these incubators. And the role of these incubators is to provide professional advice, coaching, mentoring to people having either an idea. So I can come with just an idea to start a business. I can go to the incubator who will help me in the pre-incubation phase to develop my idea, to the first prototype, the first plan, to test whether my idea is worth whether there is a commercializable potential in my idea. I can go into the incubation phase, which is from first plan. So I already have a small business, a startup, and I would wish to improve on my business processes, etc. So I can go on to the incubation process, whereby the incubator will assign specific mentors to each, we call that incubatee, and then we can guide the incubatee through to create the startup. And also the last part, but not the least, is acceleration. So we have mentors in the incubators who can guide small, micro and small SMEs into improving on their business processes, trying to find ways and means to see how innovation can help them improve. So all this scheme is free for the beneficiary. So the incubatee, or it could be a micro, small SME, could go and benefit from the services of the incubator for free when it registers with one of our NSIS accredited incubator. So the MRIC part funds the operational cost of the incubator for the incubator to provide free service to the incubatee. So just to give you an idea of how we have been faring since 2017, we have been training 245 projects, and we have been investing some 38 million. We have already dispersed 24 million. And these are the different phases in which the projects are. As you can see, 60% came in really at the idea stage, and 22% at the, 9% at acceleration stage, and 31% in the incubation stage. These are all our trusted incubators, the 7 accredited incubators, and all their details are found on our website, mric.mu. So what have we learned? And this will be my last and final slide, is that here in Mauritius, there is definitely the ability for people to innovate. However, many of us either don't know whether we are innovative, or we don't believe in our own innovation. So through this National SME Incubator Scheme, we aim at creating this trust between the incubator, the incubatees, and the MRIC. Often the incubatees, those people who have the ideas, they have this fear that the incubator will run away with the ideas. But I think now we have been proving ourselves. We have some 239 incubatees to date, and 21 startups graduated, and there is this trust. And the role of the incubators is not at all to run away with the ideas of the businesses. Au contraire, their role is to support these innovative ideas because we strongly believe in our own innovation. And these incubators, they are knowledgeable, they are experts, they are professionals. And slowly but surely, government is giving them recognition. In the several, in the subsequent budget speeches, as from 2017, there has been several mentions of the NSIS, proving, and government have been giving more funding to the NSIS. So proving that this is perhaps the new trend that we need to look into. And we would wish to inspire more people to look into this system. So I think what I would like to invite those SMEs willing to take a deeper dive in innovation, in trusting their own ability to get themselves out of this issue, is to come and see us, and feel free to contact us. So thank you. This is the end of my presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vikram Biswanath, for your presentation. You have mentioned that the MOIC is providing several funding grant schemes, okay, that aims at boosting the research project. And one of the key schemes of the MOIC is a National SME Incubator Scheme, which aims at promoting initiation and development of innovative startups. And the key idea here is that innovation will be the driving force of the SME. So I will invite SMEs who want to innovate, want to have a new idea, okay, to contact the SME, the MOIC. Right now, our next speaker is Mr. Ved Siban from the National Computer Board. He is a business analyst at the NCB since 2010. He has a comprehensive knowledge on emerging technologies such as 3D printing. He is also experienced in coordinating with stakeholders to explore avenues where 3D printing can be integrated in business. He holds a BCA from the University of Bangalore and an MBA from the University of Mauritius. We have the pleasure to invite Mr. Ved Siban to deliver his presentation entitled How 3D Printing and Robotics Are Revamping the Manufacturing Industry, a Blessing for SME. Mr. Ved Siban, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Ved from the National Computer Board, and I'm very pleased to be amongst you today. So my presentation, so I'll just share my screen. Okay, so my presentation today is entitled How is 3D Printing and Robotics Revamping the Manufacturing Industry, and How it's a Blessing for SMEs. Okay. So first of all, we need to know what is a 3D printer. So a 3D printer is same like the conventional paper printer. So like the paper printer, we need to input, for example, we type a text on Word, okay? We save it, we save the document, and we send it to the printer, which prints it on a paper. So the same concept remains for the 3D printer, where we need to do our designs on specific softwares like Fusion 360, AutoCAD, and many more. Then we save it and we send it to the 3D printer, which prints an object. Okay. Now, At the NCB, we started 3D printing project since 2018, and we manage 2 3D printing centers. One is for students and one is dedicated to startups. Okay. And in those 3D printing centers, we offer various services such as awareness for students, awareness for SMEs. We offer modeling of objects. If SMEs are willing to design a specific object, even this, we do it. And we also provide the 3D printing, which is the fabrication of the object. And we've been able to implement this project with the help of various stakeholders, such as SME Mauritius, FDI, UTM, and many others. Now I'm going to explain the main types of 3D printers. We have the Fused Deposit Modeling, FDM printer, which uses filaments. Okay? The SLA printer, which uses resin-based, SLS printer, which uses metal printing, and the MGP, multi-jet printing technology, which uses wax. I'll just give an illustration on what is FDM 3D printers. So as you can see, these are the types of printers that we have at the National Computer Board. Most of them are FDM based. So with FDM based, we use the filaments, okay? Filaments, which are very thin, straw-like raw materials made of plastic, which we connect to the 3D printer. So once we are done with our design, we send it to the 3D printer. The 3D printer will start melting those filaments and produce an object layer by layer. Okay. Now the second type is the SLA 3D printer. So opposite to the FDM 3D printer, this printer uses resin. Okay. So it uses liquid resin to produce various types of objects. Okay. And for this type of 3D printers, if you wish to produce very detailed objects, so you should go for this type of 3D printer. It all depends on what type of objects you need. Now, the third one, SLS, which is the selective laser sintering. We can produce metal parts, and this printer is quite expensive because it comes in 3 different components. You have the 3D printing part, which makes the first object, okay? Then the objects are taken to a second component, which is the debinder, which cleanses the objects. And after that, it's kept in an oven, which we call the furnace. So after those 3 processes, you have a solid object, a metal object. And these printers, you can say that it's a workshop. Okay, you have a workshop in a workshop in itself. It's quite expensive, but with technology, with time, the prices are getting lower. And the third one, we have the multi-jet printing technology printer. Okay, these type of printers are mainly used by jewelers to do jewelry casting. It uses wax, and after doing the design of the object, so the mold is produced and it's used as a castable jewelry. And after the process, we have the jewelry pieces. Now, what are the benefits of 3D printing? Okay, so for SMEs, it enables rapid prototyping. Okay, and it enables new production line to start faster. For instance, let's say you have to start a new product. So in the traditional, conventional way, you have to produce molds, which takes you a lot of time. Okay, so with 3D printing, you can start the new design very fast, any hassles. And it also enables SMEs to produce customized products, because you see now in the marketing venture, you have customers who want to have customized products, like they want to have the name of their companies dedicated on an object, or many things like that. They want everything to be personalized. So with a 3D printer, you can easily produce those types of products. And also, it enables us to save on raw materials. So if you produce the traditional way, you'll waste a lot of raw materials. For example, if you have a block of plastic or wood, so you have to cut through everything to produce a small object. So there's a lot of wastage of raw materials. So with 3D printing technology, you can easily save on raw materials. And most importantly, with COVID, with the pandemic issue, we had issues with freight, and many companies could not import parts. Okay, so with the 3D printing, if you have a 3D printer, this can resolve that issue and help you to reduce imports. Now, I'll just drop in the applications of 3D printing for local SMEs. Now, at our centers, we've been helping SMEs in various ways. For example, we've been helping them to produce parts for molding, for example, for soap, for wax, and different other products that they want to use. Some used for personalized kitchens that they offer to their clients. We have also had professionals, SMEs, startups, for example, architects who are willing to do one building or one house. So if they have to do it in the traditional way, it will take them a lot of time. So that with a 3D printer, we printed all the parts and stuck them together, and it came very fine, I mean, very detailed. And they used the model to test, for example, for light, for different types of testing. We also helped micro entrepreneurs who are involved in jewelry and crafting to do different types of jewelry. So as you can see, the frames, what entrepreneurs told us is it takes them a lot of time to do complex frames. So with a 3D printer, we could manage to do it in a very short while. So they got their frames and they worked on it and they sold Facebook or social media. Now we also use 3D printing for in the health sector to do prostheses for people who are amputated from the elbow. We did the main parts, and we worked with the Rotaract Club of FLAC recently. We printed the parts and they used it for 14 people. Yeah, it was offered to 14 people and it worked very well. And I wish to point out that prostheses in African regions, when they have to do the main connecting part from the organ and to the other parts, they use 3D printing and they have to send their file in Europe to get the parts 3D printed for them. So in this venture, if we have startups who start doing this, who have 3D printers and venture and who are able to do this, so this is an important market that we can tap on. Now and next, at the National Computer Board, we recently did the sectoral focus for 3D printing and how we could implement the technology in different sectors. We started with the agriculture sector, okay? And we worked in collaboration with FARE to see which parts, essential parts, we could develop. So we came up with the graduator part. As you can see, those two spare parts, they are they are part of a mixer system that is used in greenhouses. So the mixer system is a pump that takes all the fertilizers, mixes them, and distributes it in the greenhouse. And in Mauritius, we use the type of fertilizer that we use is powdered. So what happens? It clogs in the machines, in those equipment. And planters have to maintain it by washing with solvents, very concentrated solvents, which damages the main parts, like those two graduator. And unfortunately, those graduators are not sold separately. Thus, they have to change the whole set, which costs around 30,000 rupees. So at NCB, what we did, we took the parts, we did the measurements, we did the designing, and after a few testing and prototyping, we came with 2 models. We tested it at Fare for quite some water cycles, and it passed the test, and it went acknowledged to be commercialized. And those 2 parts, when it's 3D printed, it costs you only 500 rupees per part. So you see, instead of for a planter to invest 30,000 rupees again, he just have to invest only 1,000 rupees and get those 2 parts 3D printed, and his greenhouse can keep on working. So it's a massive saving for planters. Okay. Now, in general, in the beginning, 3D printing was recorded only for prototyping purposes. But now there are many foreign companies that have ventured in 3D printing form. So you see, if you have 1 or 2 3D printers, you can do prototyping, okay? But if you have dozens or 20 3D printers like shown on the slide, so this becomes a 3D printing form. So with a 3D printing form, you can produce many objects and with different variety. So what happens, you have many 3D printers which are connected to a server. So you as the user, so you can easily connect to any specific 3D printer and get your object printed. Okay, and this type, I mean, of 3D print form was used by Gillette, the razor company, because they did their market survey and they found that customers are always changing their ways. And it's very impactful because a razor is something that we use every day. So what they did, they wanted to change, give different shapes to the razor handles. For example, there are certain people who prefer it with different curves or depending on events. So recently there was NASA that they did one mission on Mars, and they customized their razor models, the razor handles. They customized it in giving the design of the moon and things like that. So which went on very well. And the main advantage is, in the traditional way, if you want to shift from one model to another, like I said earlier, you have to produce the molds, which might take you 6 months, 8 months. So by that time, your rivals, I mean, on the other side, they already have an edge over you. So in the beginning only, when you'll be reaching production time, so we'll be already late, lagging behind, and you'll be losing business. Whereas if you have this type of 3D printing form, you can easily shift from a former model to a new model within one night, right? Get everything on production. Okay. Now this is for 3D printing. Now my next slide will be on robotics and the concept of microfactory. Now I'll start this part of the presentation by a quote from Albert Einstein, which says that any intelligent fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent. But it takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. And it's applicable in the manufacturing industry, more specifically in automobile industry, in the concept of microfactory, which Arrival UK implemented. So you see, in the beginning, let's say till now, most automobiles are made in the routine linear manufacturing, chain manufacturing system. And it dates from the Ford time till even now. So you see robots that are used now, they do only one specific thing. So which means that you can produce only one thing, and it takes you a lot of space to be able to do many things. And this is the limitation of the traditional way of manufacturing in the automobile industry or any other industry. So in view to address this, Araba UK came up with the concept of micro factory, where each robot can do multiple tasks. So you have only four robotic arms that are programmed with AI and different softwares that enable them to do different things. So you can do, some can do welding, some can do the electrical part, some can do the mounting. It's like that. So you have the robotics, which is the factory itself, and you have the moving robots, like these small vehicles that glues the whole system, that transports the components from one robot to another. Okay, and the advantage of microfactory is that you don't require a large investment. You don't require that much space. If you're talking in terms of a car, automobile manufacturing, so if you compare with microfactories, they occupy only 16,400 square feet, whereas it's 100 times more for a normal plant. It doesn't require a large force because for example, Arrival UK, maybe they'll use around 60 to 70 people who will be working. And most of them are software engineers because they have to keep monitoring those robots and keep them working with the different programs, with the AI and other things. And I was thinking, like, in the local context, those microfactories can be set up to produce important parts that can be exported after. Like, for example, we can use for electrical components or any other parts that we import. We can produce it locally and even export it to the African market, for instance. Okay, now I'll end here. And I wish to thank you all for your attention.
So, what now? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ved Siban, for your presentation on how the benefits and application of the 3D printing. Okay, it is an interesting part of technology that will enable businesses to produce personalized parts and adapt more easily to the customer trend. We also talk about the applications of a new concept, which is robotics in the manufacturing industry. And this can be adopted by local SMEs, okay, for the African market. I invite all the attendees here, if they have any questions, okay, pertaining to this topic today, to post their question in the Q&A section. Right. So we move on to our next speaker. Our speaker today, the next speaker is Mrs. Reshma Bugel. She is a senior development officer from the Development Bank of Mauritius. Okay, welcome, Mrs. Reshma Bugel, to our workshop today, and I pass on the floor to you. Thank you.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Rangu. And the outbreak of the pandemic has affected all industries, including the SMEs. Many strategies were put forward to save the SME as they play a major role in the development of Mauritius. And one major strategy is the loan facilities provided by the Development Bank of Mauritius. Apart from the different loan schemes, the DBM has set up two major loan schemes for SMEs, namely the SME interest-free loan scheme and the COVID-19 special support scheme. These loan facilities have given a new breath to the SME, thereby helping them to readapt and reinvent their strategies and activities. Today, when we talk about reinvention and readaptation, we must make sure that the SMEs have the necessary resources to meet the challenges. There is need to turn more towards science and technology. Technology is now seen as a key enabler for firms, be it big or small, to stay alive. Softwares and technological amenities are a time investment which can expand the SME services. With the help of technology, we will be better armed to face the new normal. Accordingly, following the pandemic since March 2020, the DBM has come up with several plans de soutien, such as IT sector loans, COVID-19 working capital loan scheme, distress loan scheme, wage support to export-oriented goods enterprises, wage support for payment of bonus for this was for December 2020, reschedulement of MSMEs existing loans up to 6 months, partial waiver, 50% of rental dues for factory space for the months of April and May 2020. And there was no increase in rental rates upon renewal of lease over the next 12 months. And we have also empowered our women, and we have catered for food security. And the COVID scheme was extended since March 2021 with more facilities provided to SMEs, especially SME COVID-19 special support scheme. The ceiling was 1 million with an interest of 0.5%, and it was guaranteed by the government. And then we also have the SME interest-free loan scheme. This is for small entrepreneurs. Maximum loan scheme is maximum ceiling is 100,000, which is interest-free and guaranteed by the government. So the areas of financing of the DBM, we have several areas of financing. We have the SME interest-free loan, which is interest with a moratorium of 5 years. So 5 years, the borrower doesn't have to pay anything, and repayment is eight years. For the first 5 years, there is no payment. And then the purpose of loan, any project creating value, employment, and working capital. Enterprises which are eligible, so enterprises affected by COVID-19 and which have paid contribution sociale généralisée in respect of the employees. And there is no security for this loan. However, the borrower will have to subscribe for a decreasing term assurance. We have the COVID-19 working capital loan scheme. Loan ceiling is 3 million. With the loan ceiling is 1 million. and interest rate is 0.5% with a moratorium of 12 months. That is, the borrower will pay after 12 months. Repayment period is 5 years, including the moratorium. And anyone can, enterprises with an annual turnover not exceeding 50 million and directly affected by COVID-19, and which have paid contribution sociale généralisée in respect of the employees, can benefit from this scheme. And the purpose for this scheme is any project creating value for employment and working capital requirement. And this loan is guaranteed by the government. However, the borrower will have to subscribe for a DTA. Loans for the ICT sector. We have the computer loan. Interest is at 3%, and the maximum ceiling is 50,000. And for upgrade of IT infrastructure of the enterprises, we have interest rate is 5%, and it is up to 1.5 million. We have the distress loan scheme. This is meant for companies which have been affected directly by the COVID-19 scheme, and their turnover do not exceed 100 million. The loan ceiling is 10 million. Interest rate is 0.5%, and repayment is 7 years, but then there's a moratorium of a maximum of 2 years. And the purpose of loan is the enterprise has to restructure the business, invest in new equipment, computerization of operations, transfer of technology costs, consultancy costs, and financing of working capital. And distressed enterprises, cooperatives with annual turnover not exceeding 100 million, which are directly affected by the COVID-19, can benefit from this scheme. We have the wage support scheme for export-oriented enterprises. So the loan ceiling was as per the entity's request, interest rate 2%, and then there was moratorium on capital up to June 2021, repayment period up to 5 years, and the purpose was to meet cost of wages of employees up to June 2021, and export-oriented enterprises could benefit from this scheme. We have the wage support scheme for pleasure craft operators. Loan ceiling is as per the entity's request. Interest rate is 2%, and there's a moratorium up to June 2021. Repayment period is up to 5 years, and the purpose of the loan was to meet the cost of wages of employees up to June 2021. Pleasure craft operators in the tourism sector can benefit from this scheme. And we have the Women Entrepreneur Scheme. Interest rate is 0.5%. Maximum amount is 500,000. And we have also the backyard gardening for women. Interest rate is 0.5%. And loan ceiling is 100,000 rupees. Regarding food security, the objective is to achieve food for self-sufficiency. We have several schemes. We have the new agricultural loan scheme. Interest rate is 2%, and the ceiling of the loan is 10 million. And we have the loan for agro-industry, for agro-processing. Interest rate is 2%, and with a ceiling of 10 million. And then we have also for mechanization, interest rate is 2%, and with a ceiling of 1 million. And we have for seed and seedlings, interest rate is 2% with a ceiling of 1 million. Now we will look at our current, our normal loan schemes. So we have the MSME finance scheme. Interest rate is 3% with a ceiling of 10 million. We have the microcredit scheme. Interest rate is 3% with a ceiling of 500,000. We have the urban terminal focus scheme. Interest rate is 3% and the ceiling of the loan is 300,000. We have our normal business loan scheme. Interest rate is 7% with a ceiling of 10 million. We have another scheme for taxi, van, pleasure craft operators in the tourism sector. Interest rate is 2% with a maximum of 100 million. And we have the rain harvesting system, 3% per annum. And then with a ceiling of 50,000 rupees. We have the solar kits for domestic purposes. Interest rate is 2%. Maximum ceiling of loan is 100,000, sorry. And so this is the end of my presentation, and we have several sub-offices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bagal, for your presentation and for giving us an overview of the various loan schemes provided by the Development Bank of Mauritius for the various sectors, such as the SME interest-free loan, the COVID-19 special support scheme, the COVID-19 working capital loan schemes, and many others. No doubt, these loan facilities will give a new breath to the SMEs, thereby helping them to readapt and reinvent their strategies and activities. And I would suggest that if you still have questions, okay, please don't hesitate. You can post them in the Q&A section. And our last speaker, last but not the least, for today's workshop is Mr. Daden Venkatasamy. He is the head of the Collaborative Economic Development at the Business Mauritius. At Business Mauritius, he has coordinated the initial work of the Strategic Commissions on Economy, Sustainable Development, and Social Capital and their 18 subcommittees, driven by the development of the National Business Roadmap. He is currently leading a number of initiatives for a better Mauritius with a focus on public-private dialogue, SMEs, innovation, sectoral strategies, trade and economic cooperation, governance, and collaborative and inclusive development. Mr. Daden Venkatasamy, welcome to today's workshop. And his presentation is entitled Surveys on the Impact of the Pandemic on Business in Mauritius, a focus on SME and the role of technology. Mr. Venkatasamy, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rangu. Just confirming whether you hear me properly and whether you're seeing my screen.
Yes, I can hear you, and the screen is also visible.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you to the chairperson and director of the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center for this opportunity to talk about SMEs and to talk to SMEs. And I understand we also have students on board, so welcome to students. And thank you to my fellow panelists before me, SME Mauritius, MRIC, NCB, DBM, for their very interesting and useful presentations. I guess the Q&A session will be most important. So I'll try to make it quick, and then we can go to the questions from the public. Let me start right away. So I'm from Business Mauritius. Just for those of you who wouldn't know and who would know the names of other organizations, Business Mauritius is a merger since 2015 of the Joint Economic Council and the Mauritius Employers Federation, very old organizations which merged in 2015, and we are the coordinating body for the business sector of Mauritius. So we work on national economic development, we work on social capital development, and we work on sustainability and inclusive growth issues as well. So we do public-private dialogue with government, and we also launch initiatives for the private sector to improve itself and to work better on these three directions. So that was a quick picture. So today I'm going to talk very quickly on the surveys that we conducted recently, which show that SMEs were and still are more hardly hit than others, which also show that SMEs were less prepared, less resilient, and we'll see how. Also showed that SMEs adapt fast and remain essential players. Why are SMEs essential players? But they need specific support. And then I'll focus on the role of science and technology in terms of a way forward. So let me go quickly on that survey, just to, so that we are based on facts. And I think it confirms whatever, for example, Mr. Rampersad said in the beginning about SMEs being impacted. So we conducted the surveys with Statistics Mauritius. We got the assistance from UNDP and Government of Japan in terms of financing and technical assistance to conduct these. And we had the collaboration of most sectoral associations in Mauritius. So all sectors basically were covered. I've put, you will see big slides, but I've put red arrows like this or red circles where you need to focus. So no need to read the whole thing. These are from the report on the survey itself. So the objective of the survey was to measure the changes that the COVID brought to the business conditions on small, medium, and large businesses. So it wasn't a survey for SMEs, but we can see on all slides that I'm going to show you the specific impact on small and medium SMEs. So we did 2 surveys with 6 months interval to see the evolution as well of this. So the surveys were conducted, you will see one was conducted in September to December 2020, which is about 1 year ago, and the second between April and June 2021. The second survey, we reached out to 2,000 companies, 2,709 companies, and we got actually 609 respondents, which is big because it was a quite extensive survey. So what do we see? On responses, no need to look at this whole thing. There was a good balance of sectors. So basically all sectors were represented by respondents, which is good. And the profile of respondents, we got people, businesses from all sectors, primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors, export-oriented and domestic-oriented, range of sizes. SMEs were actually 56% of the sample size. So 24% really small ones, and which is below 10 million of turnover, and 32% medium SMEs between 10 and 50 million of turnover. 25% were mid-market, which we call mid-market companies between 50 million and 250 million rupees of turnover, annual turnover, and 19% were large companies. And the respondents were CEOs or very senior management, which gives us a big picture in general and reliability in terms of the answers that we got. So that's to give you a background on the survey itself. Now, results. SMEs were and still are more hardly hit than others. I'll give you an example on sales, exports, and cash flow. So there you go. This looks like a complex slide, so I'll explain this one so that you understand it clearly. And then the other will resemble in terms of the structure. So SMEs suffered sharper declines in sales. We'll look at it here. So what happens is, the question is, how did sales change between 2020 full year and versus 2019 full year? So on the left, you will see that sales increased, the dark green. Sales increased by more than 25%, 25%, did not change in blue, or sales reduced by less than 5%, 5 to 25%, 25 to 50%, more than 50%. So these are the colors that you see here. And on the left, the slides will show the results for overall, so all companies, and then small companies, small SMEs, sorry, medium SMEs, mid-market, and large companies. So from this slide, for example, we can see that in red here, you can see that SMEs were more hardly hit than large companies, for example, in terms of the extent by which they were hit on their sales. So sharper declines for SMEs. But we also see, for example, on the left here, that some SMEs actually managed to increase their sales by more than 25%, which speaks about the flexibility that Mr. Rampersad spoke earlier, that some of them managed to adapt and then increase their sales. Maybe they were in the right activities, they adapted well. It was a small percentage. So we see both extremes here, some being able to react better than large companies, but many of them were more hardly hit. So that's an example of what we saw on sales. And this slide now is about anticipated change. So what we ask people is not just what have you been going through, but what do you expect? So this is the anticipated change for 2021 versus 2020, for example, on sales. So SMEs, you will realize some of them expect an increase, a rebound from 2020, which is good. But a lot of them are still in a lot of uncertainty. The gray area here is uncertain, unable to judge. And you will see that many SMEs are actually unable to judge what's going to happen to them in 2021. And many of them still expect a decrease versus 2020, which is worrying, but this is what it is. These are facts, these are not opinions. This is coming from the SMEs themselves. So high uncertainty and still a lot of fragility we can see on the SMEs. So these are the anticipated changes. So I won't go into the numbers, but the magnitudes are more important. And I'm going to go much quicker now on the other elements where they were affected, because I guess you now have the understanding of how these presentations work. So in terms of magnitude of change in exports, all companies obviously were affected in terms of their exports in 2020, but you realize that SMEs were affected more here than others, again, compared to larger companies. Anticipated impact on exports. So this is basically what rebound they expect on the exports in 2021. Again, you will see in green those who expect an increase compared to 2020, and in red or in gray uncertainty, in red those who expect a decrease. Again, you will see that SMEs expect, there are more SMEs expecting a decline than large companies expecting a decline, for example. So again, this is how they are hit. Impact on cash flow. Of course, everyone was impacted in 2020, but more small SMEs were affected and medium SMEs were affected than large companies were affected in terms of the cash flow. Again, that's very visible here. Anticipated cash flow. Now, this is the 2021. 48% of companies, all sizes, did not have more than 3 months of cash flow to sustain operations. But for SMEs, that was actually 62% of SMEs or 57% of medium SMEs saying they don't have more than 3 months of cash flow to sustain operations. So again, this indicates how they were impacted. Why they were impacted? Well, they were less prepared, less resilient. I'm not saying this, it's themselves in terms of what we're going to see. In terms of operations, in terms of work from home preparedness, in terms of business continuity plans, and in terms of sustainable development activities that they have. So let's go through this quickly. Operating status in April, June 2021. So in green, you will see those that were operating normally, and in blue, operating partially. You will see that small SMEs particularly were clearly not operating normally as much as larger companies in April, June this year. So again, this is clear, this is factual. Ability to work from home, we see a good percentage of companies had some ability or full ability to work from home. But when we look compared to sizes, you can see small and medium SMEs here, larger companies being clearly more prepared to work from home and able to work from home, whether partially or fully. Presence of the business continuity plan. You can see again how many had a business continuity plan in place or were preparing it here in light green. But again, you see that smaller SMEs, very few already had a plan in place. And in fact, we got the answers that 20% of SMEs were not sure whether you have a business continuity plan. If you're not sure whether you have a plan, then it probably means you don't have a plan. So we have some work to be done here, clearly, in terms of getting SMEs, small or medium, to be better prepared in terms of any catastrophe, any unexpected events affecting businesses in general. Sustainable development. This shows whether companies had or didn't have sustainable, so the gray part is sustainable activities not present at the time of 2020, for example. So you will see that a large portion of small or medium SMEs, about 2/3, sorry, didn't have any sustainable development activities going on in their businesses, compared to only 25%, for example, of large companies. So 75% of large companies did have sustainable development activities going on before COVID. And now you see how they were affected. But clearly the idea here is that you can see that 2/3 of SMEs didn't have any sustainable development activities. So this explains, these few facts explain how and why they were not as prepared. Positively, though, SMEs adapt fast and remain essential players. We can see, let's look at adoption of e-commerce, sustained selling prices, and the maintained employment, and they plan to have more investments in sustainable development. Let's go quickly on that again. So that's adoption of e-commerce following COVID. So Blue were already using online or e-commerce platforms before the outbreak. You can see only 21%, which is good. I mean, compared to larger companies, which are only at 32%, SMEs were doing quite well in terms of already looking at online and e-commerce. And 14% adopted, or 24% adopted. We can do better, but we can see positively that a number of SMEs actually adopted e-commerce or online platforms to boost their marketing. Change in selling prices, that's an interesting one. How many companies actually changed their selling prices because of the pandemic? In green, those who actually increased their prices. In red, those who actually decreased their prices. And in blue, those who kept their prices unchanged. And you will see that SMEs, there were fewer SMEs that actually increased their prices compared to large companies. Of course, you have less head costs or fixed costs because they are SMEs, small structures. And many of them managed to maintain their prices. So that's also an interesting part for the whole of society and the whole of economy, that they managed to maintain their prices despite the crisis. Or maybe they had no choice than to maintain the prices. There we go. So now the anticipated increase in prices for 2021 is again positive. So smaller companies tend to say they will not increase their prices as much, and they'll try to maintain it, probably because they have a lower cost base, and they'll try to survive as well. So this is also interesting in terms of saying why SMEs are important. The company's ability here to maintain employees, we can see that it's the same, whether you're small or big. Companies were actually able to maintain employment. no significant differences by company size. So it means despite the crisis, despite being badly hit and worse hit than larger companies, SMEs did manage to keep their employees. And when we know how many employees SMEs have, it's very important at a national level. That's very interesting. So of course, the government wage assistance was very useful for that purpose. And we can see that 70% found the government wage assistance to be very adequate in 2021 compared to 2020. So again, that was positive. The question is now, what happens when the government wage assistance stops? What is going to happen in 2021? Again, we can see that a number of companies say they might have to decrease employment. That's in red here. So that's something we need to look at, and as a country, to make sure that doesn't happen. So future plans on sustainability, this is a very positive one, because we can see that SMEs actually expect to increase, despite all their cash flow being reduced. They actually want, now they can see the importance of it. They want to increase or maintain their planned investments in sustainable development, which is very good. The intention is there. Now we need to make sure we can help them do it. So there we go. So SMEs need specific support to address specific needs. We can see that they were more badly affected. To maintain and recover employment, we can see that they managed to maintain employment, but thanks to the wage assistance. So now that wage assistance is gradually going to phase out, or has phased out for a number of sectors, this is the support that they will need. And of course, they are key players in key supply chains. I mean, any big company relies on small companies to actually perform or export, and they are key players. So a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So we need to make sure that all links are solid, and if SMEs are part of the link, and then they become weak, then the whole chain becomes weak. So that's why we need them. Let me talk now about the role and recap, if you want, the role of science and technology. And Mr. Rampersad talked about this, turning the constraint into an opportunity to target the world market. The fact of going digital suddenly means you're also going online, and you're also this means you're exposed to the world, basically. So digital marketing and e-commerce means that instead of maybe looking at the local market, you're now looking at the world market. So, and technology will also allow you to go and find business partners, thanks to the internet, thanks to all kinds of networks that exist, social networks, professional social networks, find business partners locally and worldwide. So maybe this was a wake-up call for small businesses to actually go out there, and this needs to be a business call for a wake-up call for businesses to actually go out there, not just small ones. Science and technology will also help improve processes, quality, competitiveness, and sustainability. I think this is very important, that access to science can seem far-fetched for small companies, but you can link up with universities to find solutions and new products. So you can go for internships, you can go subcontracting research, some research to universities. They'd be glad to help. A number of them are doing some work with larger companies, but small companies can also go to them. Integrate scientific students in your teams, and there are schemes to help you with that. And you can collaborate and apply for MRIC schemes, which were presented earlier by my friend Vikram as well. So review processes and technology to work from anywhere. It's not just work from home, it's work from anywhere. And again, there are schemes under the DBM, under the SME Mauritius to actually help businesses do that. Employ young graduates with scientific and technical backgrounds. Again, there are schemes to actually employ graduates in SMEs that were presented in the last 2 budgets, and I think that's very useful. And of course, access to finance. Everyone tends to go to banks or to go for loans, but some SMEs have said they are already indebted now, and they want to go for they need to find different sources of financing. Of course, you have crowdfunding. Of course, you have angel investment. And again, these are easier thanks to technology, particularly for crowdfunding. So we shouldn't look at technology as just doing research and trying to find very, very new products, etc. But technology and science will actually help SMEs rebound and are already helping SMEs rebound. And what I'm saying is we need to do more and we need to collaborate. And that's what MRIC is also saying. This needs to involve all players and what SME Mauritius just said as well. We need the ecosystem, the entire ecosystem to actually help SMEs there. So there we go. Just to tell you, we also have on this website, we also have a special page for SMEs. So we've grouped on our website all information pertaining to SMEs on the business SME support platform. So go there and you will find information on SME Mauritius, DBM, etc., all collected on one page. And we also have a procurement platform destined to SMEs, which means businesses can actually give business to SMEs, and only SMEs will be able to look at those tenders and business opportunities. So that's what we've created at Business Mauritius, and we're trying to improve on that as well. So thank you, and looking forward to your questions and interacting with the audience now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatasamy, for your excellent presentation and your surveys that Business Mauritius has conducted. You have shown how the SMEs are mostly hit by the pandemic. There has been a decline in their sales, a decline in exports, and it has impacted the cash flow. All this because the SMEs were less prepared and they were less resilient. But fortunately, we find that science and technology has come to the rescue, because by adopting online platform, they can keep their business going, and the important role played by digital marketing. You have highlighted how science and technology can help the SMEs to rebound. I have the pleasure to thank all the speakers who have participated in today's workshop. And our next session is the question and answers part, where we are going to have a panel discussion. Okay. So the first question, I would just ask Mr. Venkatasamy, okay, if you can answer it. He said that about the SME that showed increased sale by 25% in 1920 and 1921. From which economic sectors did most originate from?
Okay, you want me to go for that now? Fine.
Okay.
Okay. Just to tell you that we specifically didn't mention sectors in the survey, because it's important to, statistically speaking, DCDM research conducted this, and Statistics Mauritius collaborated. The sample size is good enough to analyze by size, but if we go into how many SMEs were actually in this and that sector, it's not representative. So the answer I'm going to give you is to be taken with precaution. It's not representative of the whole economy, because it's based on a sample. And when we go in terms of SMEs and sectors within SME, we have fewer companies, of course, but to respond to this question, it was mostly in services, professional services, and in agriculture. So obviously there was a lot more food production by smaller companies, and people were buying more food during confinement directly from companies. And it looks obvious now that we say it, but obviously a number of SMEs managed to sell more and get more results, more turnover during the pandemic in terms of food distribution, and in terms of professional services as well, because they were probably online. But one of the purpose of the survey to look at this specific aspect, but we have an answer, but be careful, it's not representative of the whole of the economy. So it might not be applicable to the entire economy. But that's the answer we have at this stage. Thank you.
So, Mr. Venkatasamy, some people want to know if you can highlight more on what you call the angel investment, that is alternative sources of funding.
Okay, I think, well, very interesting, very important, and I think my friend Mr. Amparsad will also be able to intervene on this one. We've seen with the pandemic a number of solutions being accelerated. These solutions existed, but people are not aware about them. So a number of times people will go to banks when they are really starting a business, and most of the time banks will look for your history, financial history, and you don't have a financial history because you just started. Or they will ask for collaterals, and you know the startup is not likely to give his house as a guarantee just to start a small business or to get a small loan. So you probably don't have collateral, or the collateral doesn't is too risky to be put on as a guarantee. So an angel investor is an individual or a company who will actually invest in your company. It's an alternative to taking a loan, but of course it means that they can actually do it in terms of debt, but they can also do it in terms of equity. So they go into your capital, and in terms of control, I think there's a myth that you lose control on your company, which is not really the case. Of course, you're no longer the only one to take all decisions on your own. But if you want to grow, if you want to become big, then you need people around you. And angel investors angel investors will put the money and will actually coach you. So they want to put their money and then make sure that you're getting the results out of it. Otherwise, they're not getting the results and they won't get the return on investment. So that's the interest of angel investors. They'll put their money in your company. They might buy shares, and then they'll walk out in 5 or 6 years and make sure they get return. So if they get return, then it means you're getting the return as well. And you've grown, and your company has become a bigger company in 5 years, and you get permanent assistance because these guys want their money to actually work. So it's like, instead of having 2 persons on a company or a single person running an SME, suddenly you have a board, which is also what didn't help SMEs have resilience. When you have a team, a management team, then of course, instead of one person who might either panic or become very go for it, depending on your personality, you have a team. In larger companies, SMEs typically by nature don't have a management team that big. So apart from larger SMEs, of course, but the interest of having an angel investor on board is someone who's going to invest in your company and accompany you in your investment or in your transformation. So you get advice, you get coaching in terms of how to run your business better, etc., etc. The important thing to note is that angel investors exist in Mauritius, and they actually look for projects because they don't have enough good projects coming to them. So the money is there. The money is out there. The market actually has excess liquidity. Lots of people are looking for good projects to actually invest, and they don't find one. When there's a good project, you have several investors fighting for it. That's the situation in Mauritius. That's the current situation in Mauritius. So you need to SMEs need to know that and take the chance. I mean, look at it, look at the, start talking to angel investors. And if you don't like it, you don't go for it, but at least start talking, start listening, start looking for those guys. There are platforms that exist, and there's crowdfunding as well. We've seen Fundkiss, for example, finding quick solutions to financing problems for a number of businesses. It works differently than banks, so you need to look at all the conditions. But people are going for it. So these are solutions that exist when a business is already indebted. There are solutions that exist.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Venkatasamy, for all the information on angel investment. Now, one of the question is for someone who wants to set up a business, which new areas they can venture into. They want to know. There's lots of areas, there's lots of sectors, and they want to know if they can venture something new or So let's
If
debate on it on whether
if I give an answer, if I had an answer, I would be there myself. So I don't think there's Mr. Rampersad will probably respond to that. I don't think there's one answer for all. I think it also depends on what the person can do, what competencies, what experience you have, and what strength you have. You go for where you're strong and where there's a market as well. So it's a mix of course, not going into things where there's no market, and things that you can do, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, and that's where institutions can guide you. So I'll pass over to my friend Ravin there to go into more details on this one.
Thank you, Daden. No, you said it right. You need not be pushed into doing something. You know, the very definition of an entrepreneur is that he takes risks, and risks is battling in unknown waters very often. But then you have to mitigate your risks. And this is where the concept of resources comes in. If you don't know anything about a business and you don't have any knowledge of it, forget technical knowledge, even management knowledge of it. You don't have the means to do it. You don't have the infrastructure to do it, but you have a lot of finance. Does it mean that you will automatically be successful? Most probably no. So therefore, it's not a matter of where is it that we can guide you. It's a matter of what is it that you are going to choose, which according to you gives you a better return than putting your money in bank, that you know that there is a market for it, that you have competencies, either technical or managerial, to manage it, to manage its development, and to ensure that you are not getting into something that will later on leave you poorer than you started. So I think it would be presumptuous on our part to say, come and join this industry. It's not our role, and it should not be our role. You should know, because it is your money, and even if you were going to take a loan tomorrow to invest in order to start or to grow your business, the liability will rest with you. Therefore, the responsibility of making the right choices is yours, and it should remain yours as an entrepreneur. Most of entrepreneurs that we have started because they knew part of it, they knew something about it, they had a history, it had been passed on from grandfather to father and lower down. And you will always have the exceptions of those who succeeded despite starting on a brown field. But then the choice should remain with the entrepreneur, because the moment you start killing that part, you're also killing the entrepreneurial spirit of risk-taking.
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Rampersad.
That's it. I'll give some. I guess, Ravin, we can also give some kind of response to the question in terms of what sectors are actually looking for talent. Actually, you know, where we see that there is opportunity and there's not enough people going into. So that is. And that should not push people towards it, but actually, if you are skilled in that line of business, that can give you an idea that, you know, we lack people, or we lack skills, we lack service providers in these areas. These would be IT. So we really have a lack of IT people in Mauritius at this stage. Companies are having orders for work, and they cannot find enough people to actually work in IT. So if you are an IT person and looking at setting up your own firm, obviously you need to have the management skills as well, because being an IT person doesn't mean you're going to succeed. You can fail in terms of managing your business. So, you know, but that's one area, for example, where people are looking for services, and we have a lack of services. So that's an area of business people can go into. The other area would be everything that has to do with circular economy today. We can see that this is picking up. For example, we look at 3D printing, and I would say we're throwing away a lot of items today that are not repairable. And if 3D printing can, for example, repair electronic items, household items today, it could be a line of business that we've seen growing in other countries in terms of reuse and repair and reuse objects. It can give work to a number of people, and it's low-end work. You don't need to be very qualified, but you need the software engineer to actually design the part and before it gets printed. It's something that maybe the NCB could look at in terms of merging this 3D printing facility with opportunities in terms of circular economy, in terms of repairing, and instead of keep importing stuff that we import, we can repair them and reuse them. So that's the kind of opportunity that's still lacking in Mauritius, and where we need people to get involved into. But of course, it has to make business sense, like Ravin said. You just don't go into anything and it doesn't make business sense and you lose money. So you need to talk to people who will be able to guide you whether it makes business sense and what actually in that activity would make business sense. So I'd stop there because I don't want to say these are golden opportunities, but these are areas where we lack people, we lack services in terms of numbers. So if you are interested in going in these areas, there's probably market potential, but then you need to look at whether you are ready and you have the necessary competencies around yourself to actually go into the business. I hope I didn't go beyond lines here, Ravin, but I think these are reasonable, reasonable guides.
Well, no, it's well put. Yeah.
Mr. Nutt, if you can, if you have any suggestion, you want to react to this question?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Rangu. So maybe, of course, I do not have the answer to which sections we want to go, but one suggestion is that innovation is doing something which can add value, which eventually can make people's lives better. So one maybe advice would be, if someone wants to go into business, try to look around, observe, and see what things can improve the lives of business. Sometimes just by observing, we can get very intuitive ideas. The second thing about, we were talking about angel investments. The incubators of the National SME Incubator Scheme, some of them are and have already helped people through angel investor networks. So I would invite those who are interested to contact either contact us directly, and we can guide them to whom to contact if they want to get into the networks of angel investors. And third, and not the least, as I told you, the National SME Incubator Scheme has been operating since 2017. We have seen some 240-ish projects. And these are innovative ideas in different sectors. We have a list of these, and some of them have worked, others have not, but they are, and the incubators themselves, some incubators are finding a trend, and there is an idea that is slowly starting to develop in the startup world, that is the creation of a sort of a micro ecosystem. That is, within an incubator, they are trying to see how the incubatees can help each other. And from this, there is a list of potential business areas which would be interesting to look into. So again, those who are interested to do a business and don't know which field, then please contact us. Maybe we can guide them through to the incubators and eventually let them talk and see if they can find any affinity. Thank you.
Okay, another panelist, Mr. Ved Siban, if you want to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just refer to Mr. Venkateswamy, who said something right regarding 3D printing for households, spare parts and all. And I wanted to point out that recently I met one stakeholder who produced one small spare part for a car, the Mitsubishi, the SUV, Mitsubishi Eclipse, which the driver, the owner, had issues with the rear mirrors. So he happened to do one minor collision, and the rear mirror was not closing and opening properly. So it was due to a small spare part. And the fellow, he owns, he is in the 3D printing business, and he produced that small spare part, which cost very less, let's say maybe around less than 1,000 rupees, and he was able to fix it. So you see, so instead of purchasing one whole set of rear mirror, which costs around maybe 20 to 30,000 rupees, so this helped him a lot. That's an example. And what I wanted to point out is presently in our center at Coromandel, and I wish to thank Mr. Ravindran Prasad, who has been supporting NCB a lot in setting up our 3D printing center in Coromandel. We are actually giving training sessions under the NTRS training and reskilling scheme to people who lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And presently we have 8 participants, right, whom we have trained. So we told them about the concept of 3D printing. They know how to do the designs. They use the software Fusion 360. So they know how to use the design, and maybe by next week, they'll learn how to use the machines. And to add up to this, we added one component, entrepreneurship and design thinking, in the modules, so that we can help those participants to become startups in the 3D printing sector. So we have our 3D printers already in the center. So we'll dedicate 2 or 3 machines to them, and we'll allow them to do the market survey. For example, the one sector is in Eben, where you have all those companies, all those corporates who wish to do personalized items. Okay, so this is a market. I told them to investigate, check for the designs, do your marketing. They come up, then they produce and they can sell. So we'll assist them, give them all the required counseling in collaboration with SME Mauritius, of course, and then they can carry on. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Siban. One question, it's about the loan. We want to know, is there any pre-requirement to benefit from the loans scheme, especially during the COVID-19, considering many companies have constraints like a limited cash flow? If Mrs. Bugel from the DBM can answer this question.
Yes, so to benefit to be eligible for a loan in respect of COVID-19, the enterprise must be affected, first of all, must be affected by the pandemic. And if the enterprise is affected by the pandemic, then the entrepreneur will have a loan, an interest-free loan. And we have in the loans which are without guarantee. We have two types of loan. We have the SME interest-free loan with a maximum of 100,000, and then we have another loan. The ceiling is 1 million. This also is guaranteed by the government. But then the enterprise must have been affected by the pandemic. This is for the COVID loan. And for the other, an enterprise can have other loan also, but then they should produce some sort of guarantee.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for this clarification, because people want to know whether just you want to come for the sake of a loan or whether they have been really affected. Yeah. Okay,
Yes,
so yes, to clarify. Yeah. And our last question will be is if you can have not for all the panelists, we want to have solutions, improvements, or suggestions for those SMEs who started their businesses during the pandemic. Now we have lots of businesses who want to start or maybe after the pandemic. What are the suggestions for those SMEs? Do you have any suggestions whether they should venture or what to do?
I would wish to take this question.
Yes.
Surprisingly, as it may seem, there are lots of businesses who registered themselves, new businesses who registered themselves during the pandemic. Two perspectives. One, they were pushed to start something because they had lost their job. And from that group, I can easily mention the many chefs from hotels, restaurant owners, or restaurant, those who work in the hotel restaurant, mostly from catering. People who had agricultural land, but who were, for example, attached as service providers to hotels. They had to shift. They had to very quickly find new revenue streams. So many of them came because they were pushed into it, out of necessity, let's call it, but based on skills that they had or on resources that they had. For example, chefs who came had the ability to cook. Service providers who came had at least their resources and knowledge and the culture. For example, many of our people have a culture of planting or being in agriculture. So for them, it was not a massive shift, but they were pushed into it by necessity. The other perspective is that many were pulled into it as a result of opportunities that they saw when the market, new niches appeared in the market. It was an opportunity for many to readapt and readjust. And we saw a good number of people registering during that pandemic. So what does it tell us? That with the right frame, with the right resources, with the right skills, irrespective of external environmental situations and headwinds, entrepreneurs will always smell a business opportunity. And I can tell you, yes, not surprising at all that many of them joined in. Many of them integrated their businesses. They were, for example, only planting, but then they suddenly saw the opportunity of distributing, of selling directly, of setting up a website, or joining hands together so that they expanded their market offer and were able to attract new segments that they were not serving. So, as I said, paradoxically, we saw an increase either out of being pushed into entrepreneurship or pulled into entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rampasad, and thank you all the panelists. We have almost reached the end of our workshop. So before wrapping up, we just invite all the panelists for the final comments. Mr. Rampasad, if you can just summarize or give your your remarks for today's workshop.
You're on mute, Ravin.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Daden. I just wanted to thank the Rajiv Gandhi Center for having organized this forum. And you may have noticed that every time that we sit around and we discuss about issues, there is new light, new perspectives that come out. And I think these are the things that we need to encourage. The insights were very interesting from all sides. Many may feel that these are things that are known and that what is required are solutions. But remember, it is not always that we have ready-made off-the-shelf solutions for all these. Much of what we have said, be it on the side of innovation or investment in innovation, has to be financed, and this finance has to be sought. I am convinced that I have seen up to now a clear desire on the part of authorities of financing such initiatives, and most probably, towards the beginning of next year, we will be in a position, it won't be SME Mauritius, but we will be in a position in our microsystem to see that there are several financial schemes that are being put in place right now that will come to answer this specific requirement of, but yes, we accept that we have to adopt technology, but where do we find the finance? This, I hope that by January, we have an answer for that, because I know people are earnestly working on it. This is what I wanted to say to our entrepreneurs, to those who are listening to us. And once again, I thank all my friends around the table. Daden, thank you so much for your insights, ma'am, and the directors, board members of Rajiv Gandhi Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramprasad, and thank you, SME Mauritius, for your excellent job. Now I pass on to Dr. Vikram Biswanath for his final remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Angu. Thank you, Rajiv Gandhi Science Center, for giving us this opportunity to present our contribution to the ecosystem. So as you can see, this is a growing ecosystem, and I would invite all those who want to think differently, think out of the box, and believe in our own innovation, because I strongly believe just by living in Mauritius and by living this unfortunate pandemic, there are new ways and means that we can fight back through innovation, through the creation of innovative businesses. So I would wish more collaboration between the institutions. We are already doing a good job. And now I think we are open to new proposals, new suggestions from the public out there, and we are ready to help. So these are the final words. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Ved Siban. So, Mr. Siban, your final remarks.
Yes, I wish to thank the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center for hosting such an interesting webinar, and also the panelists who gave a very bright insight on SMEs and how technology can help entrepreneurs in the post-COVID situation. And for me, I would like to invite all SMEs to visit our 3D printing center, which is at Core Model in the incubator space of SME Mauritius, so that we can give them and we can show them how they can adopt 3D printing in their manufacturing process, and how it can help them further to put more value added things in their products. So we'll be hosting now. For the time being, we're not able to do awareness sessions, gatherings, but we are working on online sessions to gather more entrepreneurs. So I invite you all to our centers and benefit from our 3D printing services. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Siban. And I will now invite Mrs. Bugel from the Development Bank of Mauritius to give the final remarks. Mrs. Bugel, can you please unmute just so that we can hear you?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Ratu. I would like to thank the management and staff of the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center. I would also like to thank all the panelists for their fruitful insight. And I would invite all the SMEs to come at the DBM. Our team will help them and they can benefit from the scheme put in place by the government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bugel. And our last speaker, but not least, is Mr. Daden Venkatasamy from the Business Mauritius. Mr. Venkatasamy, your final remarks.
Thank you. Well, thanks to the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center for doing this. I think what, and all the panelists will agree that one of the main issues is that many SMEs or interesting entrepreneurs are not aware of support mechanisms that exist out there. So, you know, we had about 40 people today participating, but we can multiply this if we actually diffuse this information. I don't know if the recording will be on YouTube, if the link can be sent to participants or panelists, for example, and everyone can share this on their own social media, on their websites, so that we reach out to maximum SMEs. I think many of them are not aware of support mechanisms, and this should be multiplied on social media. And if Rajiv Gandhi Center can have some coverage by NBC TV in terms of a short, you know, program, that would also help going out to the public. So we need to push information to the SMEs instead of waiting for them to actually find our websites or find the information by themselves. Sometimes SMEs are busy people in general, so we need to push the information to them. The other thing is, between ourselves, I think this is an important role. All of us here, even Rajiv Gandhi and all the panelist organizations, have our role to diffuse that information and build solutions and find solutions. So one immediate action I would have for today is Mr. Ved Siban, if we could be put in touch, and I will gladly get you in touch with our sustainability section in Business Mauritius. There's a club of entrepreneurs who are in circular economy, and I think your solution and your facilities would be of interest. So there's something to be done here, and I think this is the one takeaway that we can build on very quickly. So if I can be put in touch with Mr. Siban, and then we start seeing how this can work out together. Thanks to all the panelists as well. Thank you, and let's spread the news. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have almost reached the end of our session. Ladies and gentlemen, this event would not have been possible without the continuous support of our parent ministry in all our endeavors. I wish to place on record the prompt response and enthusiasm and valuable contribution by all our speakers today. Thanks to all our stakeholders for supporting and encouraging the entrepreneur to participate in this special event of the National Science Week. Let me seize this opportunity to thank all the attendees present for having spared the valuable time to attend today's workshop and making this event a success. Our warmest thanks also go to the NBC and the media for providing good coverage. Last but not the least, to all our dedicated staff of the Rajiv Gandhi Science Center. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of our program. Thank you for your kind attention. Stay safe and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.